fourth mistake, and I was a proud liberal arts major, so I love this topic. You know, are we being inconsistent in our tone and also working customer language into our responses? And our participants here, 61% of you said you sometimes review proposals for readability and quality standards. I'd love that sometimes to be always, but the time constraints there is key. You're overburdened. We're getting things late in the process. Ultimately, we want to be able to more quickly review our proposal content, in this case, for consistent tone and to reiterate customer language before it goes out the door. And how can we review that beyond red lines and comment bubbles? So, but before we do that, let's talk a little bit more about the challenge at hand. Pretty much everyone I talk to, you know, whether you're an editor, you're a book boss, you're a proposal manager, you're juggling inputs, written input from a variety of authors, from a variety of functions. They speak in different tones. They might be highly technical. They might not be. And it's difficult to marry all that input into one coherent output. And it can result in choppy proposals. They're difficult to read. We don't want to tax evaluators more than they already are. So there's kind of a style variable here. It's difficult, and it's difficult for editors to herd those cats and and we're going through the editing cycle multiple times. So this challenge is compounded. So the other element there to think about is not only thinking about readability and quality, we're thinking about, are we reiterating customer terminology? It's difficult to line up, once again, RFPs against your own proposals to ensure that you're not missing key ideas. Because if you don't reiterate some of that key language, you might be speaking past your customer. Are you showing through your proposal that you know your customer? You understand the solution that they need to solve their problem. And that inconsistency, once again, burdens evaluators. We can't have that, particularly in competitive contexts. I'll actually share one quick story, and then Allison can walk you through the solution. I was talking with a user the other day where they were doing some facilities management type services. They were putting a proposal together, and there was a whole section on heating elements, like within buildings, and the customer was using the word boiler 25 times in a 40-page document. But their own proposal didn't use the word boiler, and the writers were saying, well, if we're talking about heating, of course we mean boiler. That's a dangerous assumption. Can we more quickly highlight that gap before the proposal goes out the door? So on that note, Allison, do you want to take the group through how we can address this really important topic, I think?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we have to remember that evaluators are people. So there is a psychological element that can be taken advantage of by mimicking customer language and speaking directly to their identified benefits and their tone of voice. So we want to begin readability analysis early and often and continue that with subsequent proposal volumes. So throughout the proposal lifecycle, we want to make sure that our message and value propositions remain consistent and we're delivering a consistent message. Beyond that, we want to kind of close the bridge of the how. So we do a really great job of saying, you know, what we can do and what we're bringing to the table, but really focusing on the benefit to the customer and how and why our solution is going to be the best and how it's going to get them to the place that they want to be. So we can enforce that consistency by automating the identification of watchwords and internal style guides. And really, we just want to make sure that we're consistent and we don't have any misalignments from a language perspective.
Great. So let's talk about, there's actually a few ways that we can attack this problem. I'm going to start with VT Writer, the other side of the visible thread suite that Allison summarized at the beginning. And if we have time, I can talk about kind of another way we can address this here at the end. But ultimately, what I've done here is I've taken an executive summary from a proposal. But this could be, you could have any kind of input from all of your authors. You could have technical volumes, past performance volumes. You can do it by author, you can do it by volume. But what I've done is, let's take a look at the executive summary and let's review it for quality, for readability. And so Visible Thread will measure that content, and it will say what percentage of sentences in the document are long. The human brain can only absorb so many words per sentence before you lose them. Are we using passive voice? Are we being clear in terms of who is doing what action? And then we measure readability and grade level. It's a measure of complexity. How many years of education do I need to really absorb your content? And we can use these objective metrics to drive better quality writing, and we can tee up editors and or authors to improve that based on the suggestions and issues that Visible Thread identifies. So you'll see kind of multicolor highlights here. Those are calling out certain issues that writers or editors would want to address. Where do we see long sentences? Where do we see passive voice? The yellow highlights are watchwords. This is a way you can enforce more consistency and avoid faux pas. I talk to users all the time. They want to avoid words like try. We don't want to try. We want to avoid words like best in class, best in breed, kind of those branding cliches. If they appear in the document, Visible Thread will highlight them and tell the editor or writer, don't use that, use this instead. So we're teeing up this editing cycle. We're not simply sending kind of redlined portions of content back to writers. It can be objective, it can be data driven, and you can work this throughout the writing process. One other thing to think about, I think it's a really good story. I work with a pricing manager who runs every single basis of estimate through VT Writer. He knows how he arrived at the price. Will an evaluator? Would an auditor who doesn't necessarily live, breathe, and die by aircraft modification or landing gears? There's a lot of ways we can deploy this and make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and you're speaking appropriately to your audience.